As the session name is, Jabong has been anything but slow and steady. You have built a really strong e-tail brand in a very short span of time. So quickly, if you can tell us what would be the 5 key aspects that you can attribute it to, and that is minus the humongous amount of marketing that you're doing.
Fair point. So as a kid, when we used to read that story of Hare and the Tortoise, the question always came to your mind, why did he sleep? So the main point is that you have to be very focused in terms of what you want. If I have to reflect, we never knew what success we will achieve, what level of scale we will achieve. But what we were very clear was in terms of what our aspiration was. And from day zero, we wanted to be one of the topmost player, in fact the topmost player. And we also knew the scale at which we will have to be if you want to achieve that aspiration. So first and foremost was the clarity in terms of where we want to go. Second, once we are very clear, what are the boundary limits or constraints that you will start playing in? For example, I can build a scale of 20,000 orders per day, and I can ask for an investment which requires me to invest for all the capacity from day zero. But is that a fair investment? Is the question you'll ask. So how can I achieve my aspiration without investing or burning too much money? So the second part was, can I design a concept which is very modular in terms of, can I do, let's say, 50 order per day, and the whole process is designed in terms of the capex, opex, etc., so that as soon as you scale, you just keep on multiplying. However, there are certain constraints where you can't modularize those investments. Let's say warehouse. So even in case of warehouse, can you spot a location where it's a warehouse hub and you can scale that warehouse by renting or leasing another warehouse quite fast, because it's a hub and you will have the availability very fast. So a lot of thought has to go before you start executing, and you are always pressed of time. So even if there is a pressure, I think it's not like it takes 10 days to think. You should force yourself to think deeply. So even it requires 1 day more, it's better to think into the details before you execute. So that's the second point. First is aspiration in terms of clarity of goal. Second, understanding your constraints and the business fundamentals before you invest. Third would be, keep observing the details or like what can go wrong. So at a scale when one mistake on a base of 100 looks small, at 10,000 it will become 1,000 or 100. So even a small error should be magnified and addressed, and people should not keep waiting that once it becomes big I'll solve it. We need to be proactive in terms of solving the smaller mistakes and able to judge that with the scale these issues will become bigger. Fourth, though it's the most important, I am raising it later, is the right team. You have to build the right team based on the aspiration and based on the structure that you have thought, and that should be your foremost priority. It's not done in a day, it's a process which keeps evolving as you grow, but that's the fourth most important. Fifth, I would say, is that all the stakeholders should be managed well. The employees, the investors, and the customers should be understood well. So you will need money to grow. So the investors, the stakeholders, and you need support from your customers to grow. So I would say these are the 5 principles or pillars which will help people to scale with constraints that most of the startups will face.
Okay, fair enough. And how important and how critical a role does your investor, Rocket Internet, play in this whole scheme of things, where all of your competitors, they can run to their VC for a next round of funding? How is that in your situation? What is your equation with your investors?
So again, as I had mentioned earlier, you have to understand all your investors. Different investors have different set of expectation, and if you are building the right value, though the style of operation of investors will differ, the values with which they invest differ, but the fundamentals remain the same. If your customers are happy, none of your investors will say don't make them happy. If I am creating value, none of my investors will say don't create value. So if the fundamentals are right, I don't see any conflict irrespective of what the investors are. Some investors might be more demanding, some might be more hands down, some might be totally disconnected with what happens in the operation. But you as or the whole co-founder team or the whole team who is behind the process or the business, if they are working for the right fundamentals, and the fundamentals are, I would say, it's not black and white, it is white. If you know, if it has creating value, if it is creating customer satisfaction without burning or without being illogical, there is no conflict.
So you said some investors are too involved, some are a little bit far off. How is Rocket Internet?
So again, I would say, instead not naming one particular investors like Rocket, but I would say that different investors bring different set of experiences or value add. It's not only money. For example, Rocket, if I have to be specific, globally they have done many e-commerce startups. Their understanding of the platform globally is very robust. To get answers to some of the technological problems or some of the challenges that worked or did not work in other countries, why it did not work, etc., that knowledge becomes very relevant and easily available to us. If I have to say one unique thing that comes out, yeah.
So if you were to look for another round of funding probably for your expansion, would you go back to Rocket? Are you looking to go to some other investor? Are you looking to bring some other viewpoints into your whole ecosystem?
I would say it's too early to comment on that, but it's not nothing specific that we'll do with Rocket or someone else, etc. It totally depends on how things evolve. Currently, we are in good shape. Fundamentally, the business is moving in the right direction. It's not only scaling up in terms of revenue, but also in terms of profitability. So my sense is it's moving in the right direction. Now is not the time to, we are definitely open to investment, etc. But it's not, currently it's not the focus where we will be spending time.
Good enough. So if I may say, the whole strategy that Jabong is following is a marketing propaganda kind of a strategy. So do you think this strategy is a sustainable one for the long term? And do your investors agree to this strategy for a medium to long term vision?
So again, it's how you have interpreted it. For example, if something is born, no one would know. If Jabong was born and if I had relied on word of mouth, it would have taken not many days than it has taken today. So we have, and in long term, it's not marketing which will make you sustainable. It's the customer experience. Once the customer has bought, how was the experience? Will he repeat his purchase, etc., etc. Yeah.
So to me, it's broadly that when the marketing spend is done, is it like spamming? Then we should control it. If no, we are more vocal than others, why not? Will it pay us back? Of course, if people try and then become a repeat customer to us. To me, I think we are very vocal in terms of we are here. We communicate to the customers who have not tried. But once they have bought it, we have also found that they are repeating their purchases with us, where the fundamentals match each other. So if my additional marketing spend gets me additional customers, not the same customers repeating me, it makes value decision, provided they come and repeat their purchase.
Okay. But this additional marketing spend that you're talking about is huge, I'm assuming. But the Indian customers are, known to be disloyal, especially in e-commerce, especially in online shopping. We would go where we get a better offer, a better discount. So in that kind of a scenario where the customer is not really loyal to Jabong or any other website, it's loyal to the offers, to the sales, to the discounts. How do you retain your first-time buyers?
So very fair and I would say good observation. But I'll treat it differently. I will not say first thing, at least the customers have become loyal to e-commerce. Second part is being specific to one or the other e-commerce players. And there it's a combination. Some customers are always seeking for deals, discount, etc. Some customers are seeking for, fashion, latest style. Some for the right experience, they want their product to be delivered tomorrow. So there you can segment your customers into multiple folds, and you are right, the deal seekers will definitely go for the best deals, and there are deal sites. How do you position yourself, what are the offerings that you are making will define the repeat purchase rate. For example, if I am not a deal site, should I try and target deal customers? No. If I am a fashion forward and a lifestyle site, I would try to target those customers because I am designed for that.
Okay. And who do you think is your biggest competitor in the market? The shopper stop kind of shops which are setting up their brands online, or the already existing e-tailers?
So definitely we perceive what is happening in the environment, but to fuel the growth and the hunger, I think the whole sector should think that only 10% of our population is online. There is many other players who would come, and there is huge potential in terms of growth if you compare with developed countries, and even in India, how many of this 10% are actually buying. The trust element, unluckily for the e-commerce, did not start in a very positive note, to say. However, with relatively new players, they have started investing in terms of that experience, and the trust has started coming back, and we assume that this will grow manifold and these percentages will multiply, and hence I would treat it as a totally, even it's relatively has become bigger, it's a nascent concept in India, and it has huge potential to grow.
So who is your competitor?
So again, as I had mentioned, offline and online, if I see the overall market, there is a 10% is not what we are aiming for. The whole thing can move to 30%. So none of the existing e-commerce should think that we have reached or arrived.
Okay.
It has just started.
Fair enough. So you've earlier talked about a possibility of a private label coming out. So can you tell us more about that?
I think India is a very tricky market. Customers are very sensitive towards price, and the price is regulated. So the business to be sustainable has to create some margin, otherwise it will not survive. So private label, because of that reason, will play a role. Second, so two main reasons for them to scale and survive, at least with a lot of players here. One is the business angle, and the second is certain subcategories and certain demand which we listen from our customers are not being catered by any big players today, and hence there is a market to be created, and since no one is there, the players can themselves create. So we will also be one of them. For example, a lot of categories, let's say home, furniture, there are not so many big brands who have established themselves in India today. So that's an area where a lot of players can create their own private label.
Okay. And this one is important. You do your own logistics for quite a while now, and so for our new entrepreneurs, the newbies in the business, if you can share your experience at how a full-time e-commerce player can, convert a part-time logistics service into a profitable business.
So I think you had a similar questions earlier. I treat it as a business in itself, and if you see today, there are many logistics startups that have started doing fairly well. Now, and why have they started? Definitely they have seen some gaps, they have seen the value that can be created, and they have entered. And when they started, they had this vision and aspiration, but they did not even have a customer. As an e-commerce player, if you can start with scale, that sustainability can come from day zero. Let's say in NCR, there is a particular threshold volume in which that module can become profitable. Then you can start that business to run. And again, I don't believe that e-commerce should not do this or should not do that. My sense is e-commerce wants to deliver some kind of experience to the end customer, whatever it takes to deliver it, without compromising business fundamentals should be done. For example, e-commerce are also doing warehousing. are also doing marketing. There are already a lot of players who will help us and we will take leverage of them. But finally the ownership of all those delivery lie on us. And hence if it makes business sense, why not?
Okay. So what is your reaction to the statement that, you know, e-commerce companies cannot really sustain a separate logistics arm?
My answer to it is how, with what vision was it designed? And if it is designed well, for example, be it e-commerce or any, why is it being treated as a service provided only to e-commerce player? Finally, it's a delivery of product from one location to another location. If it is done profitably, consistently, there is value and people will pay for it.
So you mean you can just, you can use it as a separate offering and offer it to your stakeholders?
And in fact, I don't think it's the new concept. Delivery might be, but if you see bigger players, most of the e-commerce players, even in US, etc., has become a technology platform, and they sell it to other businesses. Because once you have created a solution, though you create it for yourself, you just reflect and see the market, and you see that there is a huge need for it. Then you make it a product and sell it to the market as well. You just need a dedicated team to sell that product. The process will run on its own.
So another thing is that a lot of niche e-commerce, vertical e-commerce players are coming up in the market these days. But many of them are just entering the market in an opportunity to get acquired by a horizontal player. So what is your view? Is vertical e-commerce a sustainable opportunity, or horizontal is much better?
See, I'm a believer of ideas don't die, people kill them. So if the team is right and they have thought, why have they entered? If it was an opportunist game, opportunity did not play out and hence they are shutting it down, it's fine. But I have a strong belief that there are a lot of verticals which can be made sustainable. Even if the world doesn't believe, the team has the capability and they think, they will be able to turn it around. They might have to fine tune it, they might have to change some gears here and there. But when they enter, they would have certain assumptions before entering, which might change. They should be open without any ego, that what is changing and why am I going to, why have I started, why am I going to close it down, etc. But if the team and the effort are put, there are a lot of verticals which can be created in a niche segment where large e-commerce players will not go. For example, at a scale, I will not try to go and sell one product, a style which sells only one product in a week, even if it is at 10,000 rupees. But for a smaller startup, if they sell 100 of such products in a week, it becomes sustainable. It's a small team and it's a small scale business.
Okay, fair enough. So going forward, what is your vision for Jabong? How do you envision the brand?
So the way we would like to, at least the way we visualize it, is that Jabong should be the first destination that should come to customers' mind when they think of a lifestyle product and their fashion forward, latest style, etc. And they should trust us in terms of our delivery and an experience. So these two things, if it comes to their mind, for example, fashion forward, latest style, best product, in terms of any lifestyle categories that we are into. And second, once I buy, I know that they will do everything in their control to deliver me that experience.
And Jabong has been doing well in terms of visibility, in terms of expanding into the number of merchandise that you store. But you have been really quiet about some particular numbers, some particular data. Is there a reason to that?
So I would say that the dream with which we have come, these numbers, even if shared today, will not make sense. For example, I remember the days when we used to play in our Excel files with the numbers, that what we will achieve, etc. And we met a lot of our vendors, logistics, warehousing, and we would share our numbers. No one would believe. We also had our skepticism, but no one believed. So my sense would be it's too early to share those numbers. Those numbers would give you some confidence and happiness that yes, we have scaled so much. But is it what we are here for? is my second. So let the numbers come up when they have reached a stage where it should.
Okay.